Hey there, deep divers. Ready to jump back into the world of cybersecurity and privacy?
Always.
It's a wild ride out there, folks. We've got a ton to cover today. Election security, TikTok troubles. Even the cops are having cybersecurity woes these days.
Yeah, right.
So much to unpack. We're looking at a bunch of different security news updates and some really interesting expert commentary for this deep dive. Should be interesting.
Definitely. It's fascinating how interconnected these stories actually are, even if at first they don't seem related at all.
Yeah, for sure. It all kind of boils down to this tension between individual privacy and, national security. And then you throw all this rapidly evolving technology into the mix.
It's a recipe for chaos, really.
Yeah. So let's kick things off with the election. It's a hot button topic right now.
Mhm.
A lot of folks are worried about what Trump's win is going to do to the economy. One of our sources, MSN, is reporting that Capital Economics is already boosting its interest rate forecast just because of this increased inflation, and that could mean the Fed might pump the brakes on those interest rate cuts we were all hoping for.
It's not looking good for those hoping to buy a house anytime soon. Interest rates are going to climb. And, when the housing market stalls, that's a huge red flag for the whole economy.
Yeah, for sure.
Think about it. Job security, grocery prices, even getting a loan could get a lot harder.
Right. And on the topic of hard things to deal with, let's talk about TikTok.
Oh boy, here we go again.
Dark Reading reported that Canada just shut down TikTok's offices over security concerns.
Oh, wow.
This comes right after the U.S. threatened to ban the app completely unless ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, sells off its stake.
The funny thing is that Canadian users can still use the app, even with the offices shut down. It really shows you just how difficult it is for governments to try and control data in our digital world. They try to shut things down physically, but information still finds a way to cross borders. It's just too fluid.
Exactly. It really makes you wonder if the governments are spending all their time trying to control the flow of information, are they even doing a good job of protecting our data themselves?
Wow.
TechCrunch is reporting that the FBI finally admitted what security experts have been saying for years. Police cybersecurity. It's terrible. Hackers have been breaking into police accounts and grabbing tons of sensitive user data from companies like Facebook.
Yeah, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
And they're doing it through this emergency request loophole, the one where the police can request user data from these big tech companies if there's an emergency. Well, hackers are finding ways to fake these requests.
Yeah, wow.
It's a major flaw in the system. If a system designed for life or death situations can be tricked so easily, what does that say about the security of our everyday data?
Yeah, it's pretty concerning. This whole situation with police cybersecurity makes this next story even more worrying. Bleeping Computer is warning about D-Link's network storage devices. They've got this vulnerability, and it's rated a 9.2 out of 10 in terms of severity. That's bad. And you want to know what D-Link's response was?
Oh no, don't tell me.
End of life. You're on your own.
You gotta be kidding me. This is exactly why businesses need to take replacing old equipment seriously. A data breach can cost way more than simply upgrading your systems, but companies just keep putting it off.
Yeah.
They wait till it's too late, and then they've got to deal with a damaged reputation and customers who don't trust them anymore.
It's like they'd rather play Russian roulette with their customers' data than spend a little money on some basic upgrades.
It's ridiculous, I know.
And speaking of risky gambles, let's talk about healthcare. The Record is reporting on this new Senate bill that's supposed to completely change the game for cybersecurity in medicine. So they want to give hospitals money to improve their security systems, set minimum security standards, and then require yearly audits and stress tests.
Well, on the surface, that sounds promising. But considering the incoming administration's view on regulation, it's anyone's guess if it'll actually go anywhere.
Yeah, true.
It highlights this constant struggle between government intervention and letting industries regulate themselves. And it brings up a crucial question. Who is actually responsible for protecting all that sensitive patient data?
Right. Well, at least one country has a clear answer when it comes to protecting kids online. Australia is proposing a total ban on social media for anyone under 16, no exceptions, even with parental consent. The social media companies themselves would be held responsible for underage users, and they could be fined a ton of money for any violations.
Wow, that's pretty drastic. Will it even work? Kids will probably find ways around the ban and end up in some even riskier online spaces.
Yeah, it's a big experiment with pretty high stakes. We'll see what happens. But, compared to that, the whole patchwork of state privacy laws here in the U.S. almost seems tame. Our source, Truyo, laid it all out, all the laws going into effect in 2025. And it's a real mess. Every state has different rules about what even counts as personal data and what rights consumers have.
It's a nightmare for companies that do business in multiple states.
Yeah. And then there's this whole debate about whether we need one national privacy law to make things consistent across the board.
It would definitely simplify things, but there's also a real danger of lobbyists getting involved and watering it down.
Yeah, good point. We could end up with less protection than we have now with the stricter state laws. It's a tough one. But speaking of tough, get this. Texas is stepping up as a champion for privacy enforcement. Yeah. The Texas Attorney General is putting together a whole task force to enforce the state's privacy laws, specifically the ones about biometric data, data brokers, and just general data privacy. It's kind of unexpected coming from a state that's usually all about less regulation.
Well, it seems like more and more people are realizing that privacy isn't just a personal issue. It's about the economy and national security, too. It affects us all.
Yeah, it's true. So, what do you think is driving this focus on privacy in Texas? Is it real concern for consumer rights or just a political move?
Mhm.
And how much pushback do you think the Texas Attorney General is going to get from the tech industry? I mean, some big players like SpaceX and Twitter are based there.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. It's another example of the power dynamic shifting between governments, businesses, and individuals in the digital age.
Okay, duck divers, buckle up because it's time for our rapid fire round of news bites that'll leave you craving more. Starting with election security. Officials in Pennsylvania are pushing back hard against those voter fraud claims.
This really shows how important it is to think critically and not just believe everything we see online, especially with all the misinformation out there these days.
Absolutely.
Keeping your systems safe is super important as businesses rely more and more on digital systems, and that's where turnkey cybersecurity can really help.
Yeah, we're here to help small businesses just like yours make sure they're safe and sound in this crazy world of cybersecurity. And we offer a whole suite of services specifically tailored for you. So that's ensuring CMMC compliance and doing penetration testing. We also run vulnerability scans, and we can help you develop a comprehensive risk assessment.
And it doesn't stop there, right?
No, it doesn't.
We handle incident response, should the unfortunate happen, and we guide you through migrations like GCC. We just want to make sure your transitions are smooth and that you're secure.
It's all about peace of mind, right? You focus on what you do best, running your business, and we'll make sure that your digital world is safe and sound. Next up, we're getting more info about those Chinese hacks targeting U.S. politicians' phones. Apparently, even Verizon's wiretap networks weren't safe.
That's a scary thought. It's a wake-up call that cybersecurity isn't just about protecting our personal devices. It's about safeguarding the systems that keep our society running, including our democracy.
It's a big responsibility. Okay, and here's something that might please some European regulators. Apple's launching its new AI product, Apple Intelligence, but they're skipping Europe because of those strict privacy regulations.
Interesting. This raises some big questions about the future of AI development in places with strong privacy laws. Can we balance innovation with protecting people's fundamental rights?
Yeah, it's a tough one. We'll have to see how that plays out. Meanwhile, Google might want to start looking over its shoulder because OpenAI just announced a brand new search engine that could completely disrupt their revenue model. Imagine subscribing to a search engine that gives you direct answers without all the ads.
It's a whole new way to think about accessing information online. And it could mean big trouble for Google's advertising-based business model, especially as people become more concerned about data privacy and targeted advertising.
Speaking of trouble, Delta Airlines is suing CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike is firing right back with a countersuit. It's a legal battle that highlights the blame game after a cyber attack.
This case shows how complicated it can be to figure out who's actually at fault after a cyber attack, and it emphasizes the need for strong security practices from the start, because the legal consequences of failing to protect data can be huge.
Absolutely. Moving on to California, they're cracking down on what they're calling dark patterns. These are those sneaky design tricks companies use to fool users online, like making it super hard to unsubscribe from a service or manipulating people into sharing way more info than they intended.
This is a good step toward giving users more control and making things more transparent online. It's a message to companies that those manipulative tactics aren't acceptable anymore.
And in a dose of ironic justice, WikiLeaks got hit with a massive data leak themselves, exposing all sorts of internal documents and how they operate.
It seems like even the champions of transparency aren't immune to data breaches. Nobody is truly invulnerable in our digital world.
Yeah, that's for sure. The California court system got hit too. The San Joaquin County Superior Court had to go offline after a cyber attack. Phones, faxes, websites, e-filing services, everything was down.
It shows how vulnerable critical infrastructure is to these attacks and how it can have ripple effects on the essential services we all rely on.
Sadly, it looks like the Los Angeles Housing Authority can't catch a break. They've been breached again. The hackers are claiming they stole a huge amount of data.
It raises serious concerns about the security of sensitive personal information, especially for people who are already struggling.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that cyber attacks can disproportionately impact vulnerable communities. Okay, next up is a classic case of do as I say, not as I do. China's upset about the U.S. monitoring their submarines, but at the same time, they're under scrutiny for hacking into U.S. telecommunications infrastructure.
Yeah, classic double standard. It highlights the hypocrisy and tension that's become so common in the world of cybersecurity. It's not just about technology anymore, it's about international relations and national security.
Right. And to finish up, Russia is getting ready to sue Google for a huge amount of money for blocking their TV sites on YouTube.
This is just one more example of how geopolitical conflicts are moving into the digital space. It's a challenge for tech companies trying to operate in a world where they have to navigate conflicting national interests. It raises some tough questions.
Yeah, for sure. That was a lot to process. It can feel overwhelming to keep up with all this cyber and privacy news, especially in our constantly changing digital world. It's a struggle to stay informed and protect our own privacy. Where do we even begin?
You've already taken the first step, which is recognizing just how complex these issues are and looking for trustworthy information. Keep asking those questions, stay curious, and don't be afraid to challenge what you hear and read. Remember, knowledge is power, especially these days.
Great advice. Well, that wraps up part one of our deep dive into this week's cybersecurity and privacy news. We've got more to come, so stay tuned.
And we're back for part two of our deep dive into the world of cybersecurity and privacy.
Man, that rapid fire round was a lot to handle. Every day it seems like there's another headline about data breaches or governments trying to control the internet or countries fighting it out online.
It can definitely feel overwhelming, but remember, we're not here to overload you with information. We're here to arm you with knowledge.
Exactly. So let's take a minute and get back down to earth. What are some practical things people can do to protect themselves online, their privacy and security?
It's a great question. First things first, be mindful of what you share online. Think twice before you post personal info or anything sensitive on social media or anywhere, really.
Right.
Once it's out there,
Like you can't unring a bell.
Exactly. Another crucial step is using strong, unique passwords for every single online account. And turn on two-factor authentication whenever you can. It's like an extra lock on your door.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to remember all those passwords.
I know, but thankfully there are password managers that can help you keep track of them securely.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
Lifesavers. Okay, and speaking of things that can be a pain, be extra cautious about phishing scams. Watch out for suspicious emails or links. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And never click on anything that's asking for personal info that you wouldn't normally share.
Yeah, if a prince emails you offering you $1 million, you know it's a scam. Better to be safe than sorry. But what about all those software updates that pop up at the worst times?
Oh, don't even get me started on those.
Can we just ignore them?
No way. Those updates often have really important security patches that protect your devices. It's like making sure your doors and windows are locked. Basic security stuff.
Got it. Passwords, phishing, updates. What else can we do to stay safe online?
Pay attention to the apps you use and what permissions they want.
Yeah.
Do they really need to know your location or have access to your contacts or camera?
Right.
If not, change your privacy settings. Or even better, find different apps that are more respectful of your privacy.
It's crazy how much info we just give away to these apps without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's like we're trading our privacy for convenience.
Exactly. And we need to be more aware of that trade-off. The more we share, the more vulnerable we are to breaches, misuse, even manipulation.
So we need to be more careful about who we let into our digital lives.
Yep. Think of it like inviting someone into your home. You wouldn't let just anyone in, right?
Good point. Any other tips for staying private online?
Consider using a VPN, a virtual private network, especially when you're on public Wi-Fi. It encrypts your internet traffic, so it's much harder for anyone to snoop on your data.
So it's like a digital invisibility cloak.
Kind of. It helps you blend in and stay anonymous online. And lastly, stay informed. Keep up with the latest cybersecurity threats and best practices. There are a ton of great resources out there, like government agencies, security organizations, even blogs and podcasts.
Well, you're in the right place for that. We'll keep you updated on all the latest news to help you navigate this crazy world of cybersecurity and privacy.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's about adapting as the digital world changes.
It's like a digital arms race, right?
Exactly. But instead of weapons, we're using knowledge and vigilance.
That's a good way to put it. The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves. Okay, so far in this deep dive, we've explored the potential economic fallout from the election, the whole TikTok situation, the state of police cybersecurity, and even Australia's plan to ban social media for kids.
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
We've talked about vulnerabilities, challenges, potential solutions, and most importantly, we've emphasized staying informed, protecting yourselves, and demanding more transparency from those who have access to our data.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought, a question to ponder.
Ooh, I like where this is going. Hit me.
In our digital world where online and offline life are becoming increasingly intertwined, how can we balance embracing the convenience of technology while also safeguarding our privacy, security, and fundamental freedoms?
Wow, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We all grapple with it, individuals, societies, the whole global community. There's no easy answer, but the first step is to talk about it openly and honestly. We need to challenge assumptions and demand better from those who hold power in the digital world.
Well said. And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to discuss. So stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive.
And we're back, deep divers, for the final part of our cybersecurity and privacy journey.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah. Economic turmoil after the election, the TikTok saga, those alarming police cybersecurity issues.
And don't forget that complex web of state privacy laws, Texas making moves to enforce privacy, and the ongoing struggle to balance the convenience of tech with the importance of protecting our personal data.
We've been all over the place. And last time, we left you with a pretty big question. How do we find that balance between embracing all the amazing things technology can do and protecting our privacy and our freedoms at the same time?
It's the question of our time, really.
It is, and it's one that will probably keep us all thinking for a long time. But by understanding the risks and looking for solutions, by having these open conversations about what's happening, we can at least start making more informed choices about how we live and interact in this digital world.
Absolutely. We have to arm ourselves with knowledge.
Yeah.
That's our best defense in this digital landscape.
So let's step back for a minute. What are the key takeaways from all these stories? What trends are shaping the future of cybersecurity and privacy?
Well, one thing that's becoming increasingly clear is that cybersecurity and geopolitics are inseparable now. Countries are using cyber attacks for espionage, for sabotage, even as a form of warfare. And at the same time, governments are struggling to regulate these global tech companies that have so much power.
It's like the Wild West out there, but instead of cowboys and outlaws, it's hackers and nations fighting for control.
That's a great way to put it. And without some kind of international agreement, some rules of engagement for cyberspace, things could get very dangerous very quickly. The risk of conflict is high.
Another trend we're seeing is that everyone's finally waking up to the value of data. Data is the new oil, or as they say. It can be mined and refined and traded just like any other commodity. But the thing is, data is often incredibly personal and sensitive, which brings up all these ethical and privacy questions.
Right, and that's where the tension between innovation and regulation comes into play. Tech companies are always pushing the boundaries, experimenting with data in new ways, while governments and privacy advocates are trying to catch up and set some limits.
It's a tough balancing act, and it reminds us that technology isn't neutral. It reflects the values and priorities of the people who build and control it. It's our job as citizens, as consumers, to make sure that technology serves everyone, not just those in power.
We have to be active in shaping the future we want. A digital future that works for everyone. That means staying informed, thinking for ourselves, and holding those with power accountable. We have to demand transparency.
Well said. Well, deep divers, that brings our exploration of this week's cybersecurity and privacy news to a close. It's been quite a journey.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah, a lot to digest. Hopefully you're leaving with some new insights and feeling a bit more prepared to navigate the complex world of cybersecurity and privacy.
Remember, this is just a starting point.
It is. Stay curious, stay engaged, and stay safe out there in the digital world. We'll see you next time for another Deep Dive.